Evan, can you change the slide? Oh. All right, so who are we and who is Lenape Valley Foundation? Lenape Valley Foundation is a private nonprofit agency. We are a base service unit, and base service units are responsible for delivering services required of each county by the Pennsylvania Mental Health and Intellectual Disabilities Act of 1966. We've been in business for over 60 years, and we've been providing supports coordination for individuals with intellectual disabilities for over 35 years. Currently, we have 399 staff, and we serve over 12,000 individuals per year. And we provide services from birth through end of life. Okay, so what is a base service unit? So as I said before, base service units are responsible for delivering services required by the county. Lenape Valley Foundation was actually the first BSU in Bucks County. There are currently 3. We currently contract with Bucks County for specific services, including outpatient, partial hospital, IBHS, intellectual disabilities, etc. For individuals who don't have insurance or financial resources, we are their safety net. We will provide support when no one else can. And Lenape Valley Foundation is accountable to the Bucks County Mental Health and Developmental Programs. We are contracted through them. Okay, so the intellectual disability, Evan and I are from the Intellectual Disabilities Department, and we provide supports coordination services. So we currently in our department support 1,335 individuals, and we currently serve these individuals in Bucks County, Montgomery County, Delaware County, Chester County, and Berks. We currently have 35 supports coordinators and 6 supervisors who oversee them. Supports coordinators are responsible for locating services, coordinating services, and monitoring services. And we'll get into more about what that means. Okay. So one of the first things that will happen once you're registered with Lenape Valley Foundation or any supports coordination agency is that your supports coordinator will develop an ISP for your child. So your supports coordinator will work with the individual and their family to write a plan that describes that individual's wants and needs in all areas of living. I like to describe the ISP as kind of a manual for that person and their life. So if everyone in their life were to disappear tomorrow, we should be able to pick up that individual support plan or that ISP and know how to support them. The ISP includes areas about things that they like to do, desired activities, meals and eating, medical information, what type of supervision they need in the home and in the community, and functional information. It's a very detailed document, and a lot of parents say it's similar to the IEP, which they're already familiar with. Okay, so to start talking about transition planning. So transition planning, we get a lot of families who register with us, 18, 19, 20, but experts are now saying that transition planning should start even earlier than that and really should begin between ages of 14 to 16. That's the perfect age to start preparing for the reality of post-graduation life. This should be a collaboration between your supports coordinator, your family, and the school system. The SC plays a role in the IEP process. So when you get into those school age of 14 to 16, it's really important that the SC be invited to the IEP and that they can assist in developing that IEP and can make suggestions on how to start taking steps towards transition. It's also very important that the team complete the life course tools. And this is something that your supports coordinator can guide you and assist you with. So the life course tools is something that is being used throughout the country, and the life course tools, it's a tool to help plan for the future. It is used to develop a vision of a good life for your child and what that means for your child. It's important when you're doing these tools not to just focus on what your child does want to do in the future, but also what they don't want. So do they not want to live at home? Do they want to move out? Do they not want to go to a workshop? All of those things are important things that should be discussed when you're reviewing the life course tools with your supports coordinator. It's really important to encourage your child to participate in developing this vision to the best of their ability. It's really best if we can have the child's insight into what they want in the future. When you're completing the life course tools with your supports coordinator is going to recommend that you focus on activities, community, and family rather than paid services. Paid services after graduation are always the payer of last resort, so it's important that we explore all natural resources before we start exploring paid services. Once the life course tools are developed, it's important that these be incorporated into the IEP and the goals that your child are working on in school. Okay, so how can you prepare for successful employment while in high school? So first of all, it's really important that you explore with your child all career areas that they might have interest in. And this is a really good time to talk to your child about what they're interested in and what they see themselves doing in the future. It's also really important that they complete as many work opportunities as possible. A lot of school programs now have work opportunities, but there are also opportunities that the family and the supports coordinator can explore outside of school to give your child some experience and insight into what they want to do. Volunteer. So we always recommend that students begin volunteering between that 14 to 16 age so that we can start seeing again what they enjoy and what their skill set is. We also recommend mentoring and internships. A lot of businesses will allow individuals with intellectual disabilities or autism to come in and mentor or internship. And I think that's always a great option for students. Again, we recommend starting this as early as possible. We also always recommend to our students going through transition age that parents start working with a benefits counselor. We'll get more into eligibility a little bit later in the presentation, but one of the biggest hurdles as students graduate is making sure that they're eligible for supports, and working with a benefits counselor will make that process much easier on the family. It's also important to start working with your child on their ability to hold a conversation and interact with people in a work setting. And it's important that we all focus on their success and get rid of they don't have the ability. Pennsylvania is an employment first state and believes that everyone has the ability to work and that it's really in their best interest to be able to work in the community. So we try to stay positive and encourage the family and the student to take risks and really go outside of their comfort zone.
Next slide.
Yep. Great. So to get ready for a job, we want to focus on working on the skills that are essential for a work environment. And these are things that they can start working on in school. So we always recommend, as we said before, as I said, the supports coordinator should be part of that IEP process. So they can help guide what type of work skills should be built into goals in the IEP. The ISP process that you would do with your supports coordinator will also help you to develop goals outside of the IEP related to job skills. This includes communication skills, enthusiasm and attitude, teamwork, networking, problem solving, and critical thinking, professionalism, and decision making. We'll also be talking about in your ISP development, independent living skills that your child should be working on as they get ready for graduation. So this includes self-management or unsupervised time. Transition period is when we really start focusing on how long can this individual be alone. And the answer might be no time at all, but a lot of times people can stay unsupervised longer than we think they can. And especially in today's day and age with all the technology available, it's important to start exploring those options, such as utilizing cameras in the home, door chimes, things of that nature that could help increase their unsupervised time in the home. We also want to work on safety skills in the community and at home. This could include crossing streets safely, stranger awareness, and in the home, being aware of things like making sure to turn off the stove, checking and not answering the door for strangers, things like that. We also want to start focusing on money management skills. A lot of times, transition period is when kids first start to realize that they're going to have their own money in the future and they need to manage that. So we always encourage that you start working on money management as young as 14. We do also encourage the use of public transportation and working on with your child how to utilize public transportation and self-advocacy so that they can speak for themselves when you're not there in the community. And I just want to remind everyone that it's important to explore volunteer opportunities. These really give the child a sense of self-exploration, career exploration, so they can figure out what they want to do. It helps them to develop effective work habits, helps them develop those soft skills, and can also assist them in building resumes.
I think this is my cue to take over. Thank you, Sarah. Again, I'm Evan Salom. I'm the Assistant Director of ID Services with Lenape Valley Foundation. And we're going to get into more about what adult services look like. So in order to be eligible, you have to have a diagnosed intellectual disability or autism with evidence of that condition occurring prior to the age of 22. In order to qualify for an intellectual disability, you have to have an IQ of 70 or below. And in order to qualify for the waiver services, which we're going to talk about, with an autism diagnosis, you also have to have significant deficits in three or more areas of different life domains. And you have to meet Medicaid eligibility as well. All of the waiver services are Medicaid funded. So if you do not qualify for Medicaid, you do not qualify for waiver. Sorry, there we go, Medicaid eligibility. If you're receiving SSI, you have an asset limit of $2,000. If you are receiving SSDI, you have an asset limit of $8,000. To remain eligible for Medicaid, your income limit is 300% of the poverty line. I believe that's around $1,300 this year. It does change from time to time. In order to protect eligibility, we strongly recommend that you open a bank account for your child, and that you keep all of their money separate from your own. It makes qualifying for services a lot cleaner and a lot easier. And you won't have the county assistant's office to see like your personal bank statements. Special needs trusts and PA able accounts are very important financial planning tools. That's a way that you can, put away money and preserve Medicaid eligibility. We're going to leave a lot of time at the end for questions. These are topics that we frequently get a lot of questions about. So if you have those, we will definitely address that towards the end of the presentation. And all special needs trust needs to be approved by the Office of General Counsel, the state of Pennsylvania. If you're not registered for ID services, we get all of our, you can't just call us up. You have to go through the intake process at the county level. So here are the phone numbers for Bucks and Montgomery County. If you would like them for another county, we would be happy to provide that information. you ask for an intake for ID or autism services, they'll ask you to provide some paperwork to prove that your child has an intellectual disability or autism. And then once they qualify you for our services, they'll give you a list of the different supports coordination organizations that you can choose from. Then if you decide to pick us, which we would be honored, we get an email from the county saying that we have a new intake, and then we will assign a supports coordinator and they will contact you to set up an initial meeting and start developing the individual support plan. Okay, so waiver services, I'm sure that's why most of you are here. That's the #1 question we talk about. What is it? According to there's a website called the PA waiting list campaign. They tally at all times how many people are on the waiting list for waiver services. Right now, there are, as of March 31st, which is the last time they updated it, there were 12,250 people waiting for waiver services. PUNS is the prioritization of urgency of need for services. This is the tool that we use to determine if you are on the PUNS list, I don't want to use the term waiting list, but that is the term that most people use to kind of describe it well to families. It's a way to discuss future plan, to talk about needs, to plan for graduation. It's a series of questions. They're all yes, no, to ask, what are the person's needs? And they go over what supports are currently in place, as well as what supports are needed. And then once those questions are answered, you're placed into a category, either emergency, critical, or planning. And the PUNS can be updated at any time if anything change. The most important thing to take from this is that way more people need services than the system has the capacity for. There are 12,000 people waiting for services in the state. Waiver is not an entitlement. And if there's no capacity, there is no capacity. So it's important to plan. I always say plan, hope for the best and plan for the worst. So the ODP waivers. ODP stands for the Office of Developmental Programs. There are 3 waivers in this. There's the Person and Family Directed Supports Waiver, the Community Living Waiver, and the Consolidated Waiver. Each comes with a different annual budget. Now, this doesn't mean that you just get cut a check for this amount of money. And just because if someone gets the consolidated, it doesn't mean that they can get whatever services they want. Every single service in the waiver is needs-based. So if you can justify a need for the service and it fits under the cap for your waiver, then you can receive that service. Waivers are based on need. There are very few consolidated waiver slots. Usually the only way we get new ones are as if someone moves out of state, moves into a nursing home, or passes away. It's really difficult for us to predict when someone will get a consolidated waiver slot or even any of the waiver slots. It's truly a waiting game, and it's not based on when you go on the PUNS list, it's based on need. So whoever needs it the most at that time. Your son or daughter could be the next up to receive, and then another person in the county has a family, their caregiver passes away, and now all of a sudden they need a new place to live. They're going to jump way up to the top of the list. That's just the way it works. Here's a list of services that are available through the waiver. I'm not going to go over every single one. The ones I'll highlight are people ask a lot about the day programs, companions, a lot of the college programs can be funded if they're integrated, job coaches, transportation, home and vehicle adaptations, respite, and then, the residential settings, so the community living arrangements, life sharing, and supported living. There's also the adult autism waiver, which is run through the Bureau of Autism rather than the Office of Developmental Programs. You have to have an autism diagnosis to qualify for this. Same Medicaid eligibility requirements. There is a wait list for the adult autism waiver that is separate from the PUNS list. I'll say that you can be on both waiting lists. And also you can, you can only have one waiver. So you can't have the adult autism waiver and the ODP waiver. But you could be on the wait list for one, like if you have the adult autism waiver and want to switch to one of the ODP waivers, you can keep the adult autism waiver while still being on the PUNS list for one of the ODP waivers. And the opposite is true as well. Here's a list of services available through the adult autism waiver. Pretty similar: day programs, communication assistance, assistive technology, behavior support, job supports, residential, respite, supported employment. There's also the Community Health Choices waiver, which is operated by the Office of Long-Term Living rather than the Office of Developmental Programs. The Community Health Choices waiver is different than the other waivers in that it is an entitlement program and there is no waiting list for it. To be able to qualify for the Community Health Choices waiver, you have to be 21 years old and you have to meet a nursing home level of care due to physical limitations. Again, Medicaid eligibility. Again, you can only have one waiver. So if you are enrolled in this waiver, you cannot be enrolled in one of the ODP waivers at the same time. However, you can be enrolled in this waiver and on the waiting list for an ODP waiver, and then you can switch from one to the other. There is no cap on this waiver. There's an assessment that determines need, and that determines the number of support hours that you receive. If you want more information about this, you can go to the paieb.com and you can initiate the enrollment by calling that phone number below. Here's all the available services through the CHC waiver. Again, very similar: home health aid and nursing, a few of the day programs, many of the day programs in the area accept either ODP waiver or CHC and not both. There are a few that accept both. There's meal delivery, there's respite care, there's personal emergency response system, like where you push a button and it calls the police or the ambulance, home and vehicle adaptations, nursing home care, behavioral support. Okay, next up, what can I do? When you're thinking about the transition, it is always about getting your child or loved one to be as independent as possible. It's highly likely that they are going to be enrolled in the PFDS waiver. Most of our grads do get that. And you go from them, your loved one being in school, they get on the bus at 7 o'clock in the morning, they get home from school at 3 o'clock p.m. They're occupied all day. That is not likely to be the case for adult services. And it is essential that they are as independent as possible to do as much as their own. Again, not dependent on their families to navigate the world. I know that can be very scary to work on getting on the SEPTA bus or getting on the train or working in the community where they don't have eyes on them all the time. But it's important to take calculated risks to gain independence. And sometimes that backfires. It's all about trying things just to see how well people can do. Again, jobs are essential. Pennsylvania is an employment first state. Employment has to be the first option for everyone. Not saying that everyone has to be employed. We realize that that isn't realistic for some individuals, but it has to be considered. Here's a list of our references that we used. Some phone numbers. Again, the Bureau of Autism to enroll in the Adult Autism Waiver, Bucks County phone number and their website if you want to register for services, and the phone number and website to enroll in the Community Health Choices Waiver. And now I will open it up for questions.
We don't have any questions in the chat. Somebody had asked for contact information. I think it was for puns. Is there additional contact information for that maybe we could?
So that would be your supports coordinator would put you on the puns, and they would be your primary contact for the puns.
Who would be a supports coordinator at LVF? I guess maybe this person is currently not enrolled in services with us, because I think if you were getting supports coordination from LVF, you would know who that was. But you are more than welcome to, we are enrolled. So our contact is that person. Yes. Your contact at LVF is most likely your supports coordinator, correct, Sarah?
That is correct. Yeah. And if you have a specific person that you need to get in contact with, you can let Evan or I know, and we can help you with that.
Also, Zoom does not allow us to capture your email addresses when you registered, so we don't email out the recording. However, we will make the recording available on our website. The address is lenapevf.org/free workshops, and we'll put it right in there. We have, how much is the adult autism waiver yearly?
The annual cap, I'm guessing that's the question.
Probably.
I don't know. I believe it's needs-based in that there is no cap. Sarah, is that correct?
That's correct.
There is no cap as long as you can justify a need for the services. I know that the waiting list for the adult autism waiver is very lengthy. And I believe that that is a number, you go on the waiting list and you are a number. And whenever your number is called, that's when you're up. It's not needs-based like the ODP waivers.
Sarah, your Lenape Valley Foundation supports coordinator can help with finding resources for businesses that might help employ or with volunteer positions, correct?
Absolutely, yes. Our supports coordinators can definitely help with that. Another really good resource is most schools have a transition coordinator, and they can assist with that as well. And we are always sending out resources that we learn of to families. So if there's something specific that you're looking for, just let your supports coordinator know, and they can absolutely assist with that.
I also want to mention with that OVR, the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. They are a free service open to anyone with a disability. We can refer to them, and as is the schools can also refer to them. And I believe you can apply online for their services. They do job coaching, they do trials, you can try different, they do job sampling where you can try a bunch of different jobs and see which one you like. They do work assessments to determine if they feel like someone is employable or not. They're a great resource that either the school or your supports coordinator can connect you to.
We have a waiver question. I'm not sure which waiver, but it's asking about, should you be applying for waivers before age 21, if that's the eligibility? Is it recommended to start early, and what age would you recommend?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that's in regards to the ODP waivers. And we can put people on PUNS for an ODP waiver as soon as they're registered with us. So that's as young as 3. It is very rare for someone to actually be given a waiver slot prior to graduation. It's not unheard of, though. It does happen occasionally if there is a true emergency within the family, but we can certainly put them on that wait list and get them started in that process prior to 21.
I usually recommend that about age 16, they go on the PUNS list.
Yeah, so typically the PUNS list, so this is going a little bit deeper into PUNS. There are 3 categories of PUNS. There's planning, which means that the individual will need supports 2 to 5 years in the future. Critical, which means they'll need it within the next 2 years, and emergency, which means they'll need services within the next 6 months. So typically we recommend putting people on planning around age 16. 2 years out from graduation, we bump them up to critical category. And then 6 months out, so usually December 1st, the year that they graduate, we bump them up to emergency. So that's typically the kind of the ages we go by as we're determining where to put people on the PUNS. However, it really is case by case, and we can certainly make changes depending on the situation.
I'll also add that when we say graduate, because people with disabilities are eligible or entitled to go to school through age 21, we talk about age 21 as the graduation year. Some people choose to graduate early. Usually those people are not given priorities for waivers because they chose to graduate early.
2 things. One real quick, recognizing, I'm just going to verbalize, recognizing that job opportunities, school district opportunities, and volunteer opportunities have been maybe harder to come by with the past year and the pandemic. I do know that, the workforce there's not many people in the workforce. So I want to suggest that if you are able to get a job, there are lots of employers looking to hire now and having a hard time doing so. So
absolutely.
If you tried before and had a difficult time, try again, because they might be more willing to be flexible.
Absolutely. And just, I don't know if your child can do virtual, but we do have a list of virtual volunteer opportunities that your supports coordinator can share with you as well, if that's something your child would be interested in.
Super helpful.
I walk around my neighborhood and every single business has a hiring sign in it.
Concerning bank accounts, opening up a separate bank account for your child, would that be under your name? Would that be under your child's name, or a combination of both?
It should typically be in your child's name or the parent's name with the child on it. We just recommend that they have a separate bank account that you're not combining your funds. That's when it gets really messy. When you're applying for waiver or supports, you have to submit bank statements for any account that your child's name is listed on, even if they aren't the primary holder. So that's why we always recommend that you have a separate account that have just their funds in it.
Yeah, if they're getting SSI and you get it direct deposited into your bank account, the county assistance office is going to ask to see a copy of your bank statement. That's why we always recommend that they have a separate account.
This person, she has a son who is over 21 and on the autism spectrum, but does not have an intellectual disability. He still has a hard time taking care of things like finances, and she's worried about him making it on his own. What kind of supports could be available to him that could help her?
Sarah, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So we can also, we do support individuals with intellectual disability or autism, I'm sorry, as long as they have an area of deficit in 3 areas of the life domain. So we would need to see some testing to make sure that they qualified, but if they did, they would be eligible for all the same supports that someone with intellectual disabilities would be.
And I know that, and maybe we can make some resources available after this meeting on the workshop's website. I know there are a lot of autism organizations that might have some more access to, specifically for people on the spectrum
Absolutely.
that would not meet our criteria for.
Absolutely, yeah.
But in terms of the criteria, just to get a little bit more specific, they look at the adaptive functioning domain. So it's the testing that they look at is the ABAS or the Vineland. Those are the ones that they would reference when determining eligibility.
So more questions about bank accounts. Somebody had more questions about puns. They missed it. I'll just remind you guys that we are making the recording available on our website after this for those of you who maybe missed part of the presentation. With a combined bank account, is it okay if the parents are making deposits into the kids' bank account?
Yeah, as long as they remain below the asset limit to be eligible for services.
Okay. And we have some extra time, so I hope you guys don't mind us asking all the questions.
No. We wanted to leave plenty of time for questions because we know there are a lot
So
around this
complicated.
area.
Yeah, and I'm handling the ones in the chat, but if the chat slows down and you guys want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to ask the questions in person at this point. The last question that I have so far is there an average wait time between turning 21 and being approved for the waiver? And then is that dependent upon what county you're living in?
Yeah, so I would say most of our individuals are given waiver, and that's the PF waiver, which is the $33,000 waiver by the time that they graduate. We have had years though where sometimes, I think the latest we've seen it go was about fall of the next year. It really depends on the year and what the funding looks like. If the state releases a lot of slots, it makes it easier to get people enrolled by the time they actually graduate. Most years that is successful, but we have had years where it takes a few months longer.
This year has seemed to be a little bit slower than most. The Office of Developmental Programs has said that they don't have as much funds for new waivers this year. We have seen some of the grads being identified, but there are still a lot that are waiting. And just when the county does identify someone for a waiver, you'll get a letter directly from the county, but the county also lets us know. So your supports coordinator will probably call you and tell you that that is happening. And we require to complete the enrollment, we require a physical completed by the doctor. And we have a form that your supports coordinator will give you to have the doctor filled out. That is good for a year. So if you fill it out in like December, January, it'll be good in June when you're going to enroll. The other thing we need is the Medicaid application that we've talked about. That's where you have to declare all income and assets for your individual, for this, your child. And that's where we need bank statements, copy of any bonds or trusts that they have, copy of their award letter from Social Security. So that is typically a holdup. And then you'll work with your supports coordinator to find out what services are appropriate. They will assist you in finding a provider. And then once a provider is found, we can complete the enrollment.
Back to the financial stuff. I think we have a couple questions about that, but SSI payments, do you suggest that they go in? Some folks have them going into their personal account as an adult, as a parent, and then transferring that money to their child's account, or should they be going directly into the child's account? If you have any advice on that. I
would strongly recommend that they direct deposit into the child's account.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Great.
And then from there, they can pull money out, like they can transfer money out of the child's account into their own for room and board. Like you can charge your child rent or like other expenses, but I would recommend that they first direct deposit the money into the child's account and then pull out the rent money.
Right. That makes sense. I'm not sure if this is a question necessarily or just a comment. Son is 29 and just starting OPWDD services. Did not get any transition planning in high school and just concerned about the future when parents are no longer around. because he lives at home, and I'm imagining this is a lot of people's concerns, you know, what happens when you're gone, and how do you do that? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would recommend for that case, you give me or Evan a call and we can kind of walk you through that process.
We often talk about two transitions, the first transition being that transition out of school, and the second transition being that transition from no longer having mom and dad to support you anymore.
Right. Can my son start his own ABLE account so he can, maybe bank account, so he can still be eligible for services and not worry about hitting the limit?
Yes.
Yes. All money in the ABLE account does not count towards your asset limit.
Waiver question. Does the supports coordinator advocate on behalf of the child for the waiver that they need? How exactly does the waiver decision get made for each person?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We do advocate on behalf of the child. Typically, it would actually be the supervisor, myself and Evan, who are the ones directly speaking with the county. But each county does it slightly differently, but we do meet with the counties at least every 6 months to go over who is on that wait list. Usually we go over the critical and emergency people, and we advocate for everyone on the list. What I would say that you can do to assist in that process is make sure that if there are situations going on that are emergencies, there are things going on in your household that really necessitate you guys getting funding as soon as possible, that you're communicating that with your supports coordinator.
We need to know everything. We need a full picture of what's going on so that we can appropriately advocate. If there's health issues with the caregiver, if there's health issues with the individual, if there's behavioral stuff going on, we need to know so that we can be the best advocates that we can be.
Somebody clarified that the ABLE, ABLE account is limited to 100,000 and you can only put in 15,000 each year.
Correct.
Anybody had any questions about that?
Yeah, if you wanted to do more than 100,000, I would recommend doing a special needs trust.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people talk about, what to put in their will. Do they want to leave money to anyone? You can set up a special needs trust so that, when you pass or, whenever that money becomes available, it goes directly into the trust and does not affect their benefits.
Great. I'm not quite sure. I'll read the question and you guys, Terry, feel free to chime in, live. As an employment integrated support specialist, how would my participant work with their supports coordinator to get the services they need? He's on the borderline to show an obvious need, like he has a part-time job, but struggles with independent skills.
Does this individual have a supports coordinator yet? Would be my first question.
Yeah, I would say if they don't have a supports coordinator through Lenape, contact Sara or Evan. If they do have a supports coordinator, probably reach out to them and talk about this and what kind of help we can provide, right?
Yep.
I think the biggest question to ask there is if maybe the person, if they're borderline, they might not be eligible for waiver. Then we can advocate to the county for base funding, which is they do have some funds from time to time to support individuals that kind of fall through the cracks in terms of eligibility. Those funds are pretty limited, but we can advocate if there's a true need.
Happen to be in Lehigh Valley County. My participant does have a supports coordinator. When I took on his case, I didn't know he had one, and we were contacted to have an annual. And so through the pandemic and I guess him being on that base tier of being just having a supports coordinator, they only meet once a year. And again, the services that he was getting stopped because of the pandemic. So it's almost, I feel like was that annual another inventory to evaluate services, and how do I help him advocate for himself? Can I speak frankly with the sports coordinator as far as what he can and can't do?
Yeah, we do an annual ISP meeting yearly, where we are reevaluating and making sure that the plan is accurate for what's currently going on. And I would say your best course of action would be to schedule a meeting with the supports coordinator, yourself, and this individual. And really make sure that the supports coordinator knows what's going on, and they can work with you from there to get him the resources he needs.
Because sometimes I don't know what he can and can't do because he wasn't given the opportunity.
Mhm.
He wasn't put in his father believes he's going to need housing assistance, which I kind of agree. Will he gain the skills when he's in these housing assistant situations? Maybe, because he made slow progress with me on some independent skills. He really struggles with focus, being autistic. He has a hyper interest in anime, and that is the only thing he talks about. And he has a part-time job, but he really doesn't want to be there. He wants to talk about anime. He wants to daydream. He wants to write. He wants to be a writer, anime writer. And I'm trying to encourage it, but as you noted in the presentation earlier, I have to work on those work skills. Can he be a work member? Can he be responsible? Can he interact? I think he's going to struggle with that, but he has a skill with anime writing. But he doesn't have the confidence to, and he doesn't want to drive. I think he's fear of getting his driver's license. Yeah, it's that borderline that I appreciate your advice. I didn't know how candid how open we could be with the supports coordinator, but I think we'll do that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I would definitely try to figure out if he is eligible for waiver, or if he's not eligible, why is he not eligible? Is it because the IQ is too high? Then there's really nothing we can do, and we need to keep, he would need to stay in that base tier. But sometimes people are ineligible because they have money somewhere that they need to spend. Does that money need to move into an ABLE or a trust? And then sometimes we can get people who are no longer eligible, who weren't eligible, we can get them to eligible. And then once they're eligible for waiver, a lot more doors can open up.
Is IQ
Oh yeah, because he's autism.
Yeah, he definitely has a higher IQ.
Okay.
I think it's 82.
Okay, then yeah, you'd have to look at the supports coordinator and the family can look at the adaptive functioning and determine if he is eligible.
Thank you.
And then they'd have to look at the financial stuff as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Seems like the questions have slowed down. We just have a question about if their, I assume, son or daughter participates in graduation to walk with their class, but still stays in school until they're 21. Does that affect services or anything like that?
No, we encourage kids to walk with their class. That's a nice event for them and makes them feel like part of their graduating class. But as long as they are still receiving the school services past the actual graduation ceremony till age 21, they're fine.
Great. Well, we have a few more minutes. If anyone wants to chime in with some last minute questions, otherwise we can end and you can all get a free couple of minutes. Just another minute. I put Sara and Evan's emails in the chat So you have their contact information to reach out to them. Also, the Lenape website, we have a whole section on intellectual disability supports and what that looks like, and some contact information there as well. So we thank you guys all for coming. Thanks to Sara and Evan for such a wealth of information on this topic. I think we had talked, we could probably have gone several more hours and gone in depth with all of the things that we touched, but you know, we appreciate that very much.
I just put another question in there.
Oh, sure.
If we have the time, I'll just keep thinking of one. Are counties different on funding?
No, all the counties in PA have the same types of funding available, but they each decide, they might have a different process for how they make their determinations on who to give it to at what time.
There was so many on the waiting list. It sounds like the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Is that fair to say?
I would say is a fair statement.
So my program, I work for Keystone Autism Services, and we're all about building on their strengths and their skills. So to talk about what they can't do is difficult, especially when, you know, we work with young adults and they just weren't given an opportunity to do some of these things. And how do you evaluate what they can and can't do?
Yeah.
If they haven't been given opportunities.
A lot of time we see that, you know, person is, you know, in their 50s and, you know, now mom has done everything for them their entire life. And, you know, how do we, they might not have a lot of skills, but it's to no fault of their own. And, you know, and maybe they've become accustomed to everyone doing everything for them. Exactly. And now they don't really feel motivated to learn new things. And yeah, definitely a struggle that we encounter all the time. Mm-hmm. I would encourage them to, you know, whatever they do during the day, if they work, if they go to a day program, if they have other supports I would encourage them to do things outside of the home as much as possible.
Yeah, I'd like to see my participant, you know, but I don't think he would qualify for these day programs.
Yeah.
Where he can, you know, I guess find more socialization, more interaction with vocational and independent skill building.
There are lots of social groups that are not funded by waiver that people can go to. I know, like in Bucks County, there's Autism Cares Foundation. In Doylestown, there's the Seekers program. All sorts of different, you know, Special Olympics is a great resource that we send people to all the time.
What were the name of the groups again in Doylestown? I'll just like try to search something similar. What were they again?
The Seekers program. It's out of Seekers, SEEKERS. It's actually run out of the Bucks County or the Doylestown YMCA.
And what was the other one, Evan?
The Autism Cares Foundation. They're in Southampton. They do a whole bunch of different programs. I know they do dances monthly. They have a Fit Life program where they have personal trainers come in and set up obstacle courses for people. They have a Glee club. They do a lot of different things in the community.
Wow, I hope to find one. I know we have an Autism Society group in the Lehigh Valley. It sounds like these would be great programs, especially if we couldn't get qualified for the day program. I know some of my participants do qualify, and I'm looking forward to visiting them when, you know, the COVID restriction relief is relieved. Thank you.
Autism Cares is apparently doing virtual programs as well and has been. So maybe something to look into if you're not local to Bucks County as well. All right, everybody, I think we're hitting our time. So thank you all again for attending. Thanks to Sara and Evan, and we appreciate you guys spending the last hour with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.